Ultimately, visualization it transformed my entire life, and I realized the benefits of it. I think scientists are just learning even more so how powerful it is, and I think there's more for us as a human race to dive even deeper.
He's the top-ranked linebacker from the class of 2009, and it doesn't take much more than a glance at his highlight film to figure out why.
Jelani Jenkins, welcome to Beyond the Lines, man. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I want to start with a little background on you as an athlete. Now, we can't really ignore that. We're going to talk about your transition from being an athlete into the entrepreneur you are today. But just as an athletic background, starting from scratch, obviously came out of high school as the number one linebacker in the country in 2009. Went to Florida, played with some big names there, Tim Tebow, Joe Hayden. Was Marquise Pouncey there at the time you played?
Yep. Marquise and Mike.
Yep. So played with some big-time players there. Got drafted by the Miami Dolphins, and in 2013 led the team in tackles that year. And for the next few years, stayed there. Moved, went to Houston the year, and enjoyed a 5-year career, which is a pretty good career in the NFL. As we all know, the NFL can last for not for long. But you enjoyed a pretty good career there, and now you're transitioning over to the entrepreneur side of things and enjoying life off the field. We're going to talk about your transition into what you're doing today, but I think a lot of viewers and listeners are going to want to understand and get a kind of glimpse of the NFL atmosphere and what it was when you were there. So obviously, when everyone's a little kid, everybody that is growing up as an athlete, you see the path. You see it, okay, I'm going to be the best player on my high school team. All right, I'm going to get that Division I scholarship and that full ride to that good school. At the time you went to Florida, they were just off the national championship, right? So you had that, and then I'm going to make the league. It seems all great, the glamour, the money and everything. We all picture that. Now, I got to ask you, is that dream scenario, how realistic is that? Is it what you dream of it when you're a little kid?
Yeah. I think what isn't talked about as much is the amount of hard work and blood, sweat, and tears, and just the amount of mental toughness that you gain through that whole process, especially going into a Division SEC program, but all the collegiate Division I schools. I mean, they work out, rigorously, and you learn a lot more about playbooks and different things like that. So there's so much development and growth, and a lot of people get lost in that.
Right.
At that part of things. And so, a lot of people do have that glamour, that
Right.
idea of what their life can be like once they become a professional athlete. And they see all the positives and they see all of the gifts, the rewards that happen from the hard work. But I think ultimately what I realized was a lot of people didn't realize how much sacrifice, how much hard work it takes, and how much mental toughness it takes to really develop yourself to be able to play at that level.
Transitioning over to what you're doing today, past your playing days, I don't want to overlook one thing that when I was looking at your website, mindbodysports.org, you talk a little bit about yourself and your process. And one thing you talk about in the NFL is that, it taught you a lot about life. You said it was an incredible experience and a dream come true. And at the same time, it uncovered for you the reality of the athlete's journey. Now, that resonated with me because that's something that I've experienced, and not at all at your level. Obviously, not in the league or anything like that, but I think a lot of athletes that at some point give up your playing days, they're going to understand what you're talking about there. But can you go into that and explain what you mean there?
Yeah, I think while you're in it, it's difficult to really understand the bigger picture and what's happening, if that makes sense. Like when I was deep in my career, professional football, especially a young athlete, just doing the best I could to get out there on the field and make plays. There's a system that's set up to prepare athletes to obviously perform at their best on the field, and a lot of that system is geared to make you one focus strictly on football. and ultimately, in order to bring out the best competition amongst one another, you like the coaches, and in order to bring the best competition out of guys, they'll sort of create scenarios where they make you think like this is the best time of your life. This is the only time you'll ever be able to get this amount of money. So pretty much, go all out in practice. That was the whole goal, was to bring out the best in competition. But in doing so, just all throughout our career, we've been led to believe like this is it, this is it,
Right.
this is it. And it wasn't until I left the game and had an outside perspective, I started diving into mindfulness. I really started to open my mind up to more possibilities, and I saw how it really leaves people lost when they leave.
Right.
When you make them feel like this is it, and then they're getting money for the first time in their life and young, so they believe it, and so it just showed me that once you leave the game, it doesn't matter how much money you have. I mean, you're stuck with your mental health, and if you have poor mental health, then that you'll eat away at that money pretty much. Like the money doesn't really matter if you're not
Right.
able to sustain it moving forward. So
Right.
yeah.
I think it's really a case where you're really playing with fire, because we don't, and a lot of athletes in that position where you see yourself where you're at that time, but once your career is over, there's a sort of what's my identity, because outside of sports, you don't really know what it is, and it's not necessarily your fault. It's what society paints, right? As from when you're a little kid and when you're growing up, going through these different stages, and when you're in high school, everything's surrounding football, right? I'm from Texas, so football in Texas was literally, it was religion. That's the only thing that mattered. So if you played football there, then and you were a good player, then no, the teachers were the coaches' wives, so they want to see you succeed. They're gonna pass you to make you do well. But it's just, you forget about everything else. So when that is finally taken from you, no matter how it's taken from you, whether it's an injury or you do make it to the league and you last a few years and then you're finally out, you're left with, okay, what's my identity? And it's something that a lot of people do struggle with, and that's what I see you, and I saw what you were doing, and it really inspired me, because I saw that one thing that you said that you wanted to do with kids was you wanted to utilize more than just their athletic ability, for them to realize that they have more to mind, the spirit, stuff like that, because that's something that can easily translate into other areas.
For sure. That's another thing I realized was, to your point, like there's so many, I mean, from the kids up, there's a lot of people and players that I ran into in my career that had some trauma, like grew up in very difficult neighborhoods.
Right.
And football was that escape, and football has always been that escape. And they leveraged that a lot of it is fear, deep fear. I mean, they leveraged that to power themselves up. Fear of disappointment, fear of not being loved. Whatever they went through as children in these tough neighborhoods, they leveraged that to be outstanding on the basketball court, on the football field. And so when you don't deal with those areas, and they're actually not even dealt with, especially for a defensive player, they're taught to they get cheered on and applauded when they are mad aggressive. You know what I mean?
Right,
Not
yeah.
even when a lot of that aggression is coming from, I saw my brother get killed, at 8 years old. And
Right.
so once they leave the game, that aggression is still there. No one's cheering for them anymore. That trauma still hasn't been dealt with. You got all this money, you can see how that combination turns wild. And so I think that's my biggest passion, is I know how much the world, how much America, takes pride in sports. And I know how much influence athletes have.
Right.
And so my biggest passion is to go back and dive into that world and start to develop them in an entirely new way, where they are not only using their mind to perform better, but they're actually healing and using their mind to sustain better once they're done playing, whenever that time is.
And as far as for you, I saw that you grew up with a solid family, a family that you grew up through elementary school and middle school. You actually went to a school where you learned African history, right? And you actually weren't exposed to American history, and saw a video you posted on your YouTube where you were talking about how you knew who George Washington Carver was, but not necessarily George Washington. And the funny story you told about Martin Luther, where you were in high school and they asked about Martin Luther, and a lot of the kids were kind of hesitant to answer, oh, who's Martin Luther? And you were adamant about it, Martin Luther King, this civil rights leader, all this, and they told you were wrong, and somebody else came out and was like, nah, he's this, led the Protestant revolt and all that stuff. But point is, aside from all that, I mean, you were a great student, near perfect GPA in high school. But the point is, what kind of values did that instill in you to be able to go through that school that you did in elementary school and middle school, and being able to appreciate your heritage and all that?
I think that's an amazing question. It really brought on a level of pride, in the sense of I always had a vision that I was able to and deserve to have a very successful life if I work hard and I'm on what I need to. And it was because I was able to be in that environment where we had posters on the wall of, like I said, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Frederick Douglass, Nelson Mandela, Muhammad Ali. I mean, there were so many. Our room was covered with African American heroes, and it wasn't until I left that environment, because that was all I knew growing up. It wasn't until I left that environment and went to that Catholic, predominantly white school, and I learned the other African Americans had no idea of many of those people on the wall that I came into every single day. In that psychologically, there's a difference in just self-esteem, self-esteem and knowing what you're worth, knowing what you're able to accomplish. This is before Obama became president. Right. So just for people who look like me to see someone that looks like them able to make it, it doesn't happen often. And I think the world is starting to sort of realize that in a bigger way now.
Right, no doubt. And so you had the strength in your foundation, and can you attest to that being a huge reason for you to be able to be stronger mentally? Because having good grades is one thing, right? You can put yourself and study, open the books, put your head in there and really study, but having a sense of being able to collect yourself once your playing days are over, have that identity, have that strong identity that I think you growing up in that culture gave you. How strong was that in helping your transition?
It was huge, man. It was really huge. Besides just my elementary and middle school, I mean, my family, I was raised by a father who was raised by a civil rights leader. My great grandfather was a civil rights leader and knew Dr. King really well. And so, it wasn't just school, it was coming home. And I remember growing up, my father used to always challenge me like his father challenged him in every single thing that he did. There had to be some underlying factor of, okay, how is this helping our community get out of the hole that it's in? Like, everything had a bigger vision to it. My father's an architect, and every time he would bring his design to his father, my grandfather would always ask him, "That's amazing. You're a bad boy, Maurice. How is this going to help out our community?" And he always had to have an answer for that. And so I think it's also a motivating factor for me. Everything that I've always done has been for, a higher purpose, not just for my community, but also to help people, bring them closer to God, to whoever they feel their God is, or whoever they relate to, and just helping people see that in themselves and see that they are able to accomplish anything that they want. but it really helped having that support system, not just from the school, but from my family. Um, and I guess it gave me an even bigger why to motivate me for all the hard work that I see.
And did you feel that when you did leave your playing career that you did have this strength of like self, this awareness of who you were beyond the game?
Yeah, I did. But me, I would say was really, really blessed to have a family and a support system. I struggled.
Right, absolutely.
I would say, yeah, I did have a year and a half buffer where I was just kind of all over the place, figuring out, okay, who am I outside of this? It took a lot of trial and error and learning a lot about myself. So I would say that I was thankful and I'm grateful to have a support system that helped with that transition and helped me to understand self. But even for me, it was very difficult. It wasn't easy at all. And so I know for those who don't have that support system, I know how difficult it is.
Right. What were the toughest parts? So you were able to transition, obviously, where you are today. What were the toughest parts, and what made you keep going and eventually find that sense of who you are and what you feel you're meant to do?
I would say the toughest parts is just sort of dealing with, it was figuring out like the feeling inside. I didn't really have a title. I was feeling it was uncomfortable. It was a part of me missing the game. It was a part of me excited to now be opened up into a whole new world. Didn't know if that feeling was regret for leaving something behind or leaving too early. So just that journey within was difficult, and had to come to some real realizations of like, okay, this is something you could have done better. What will you learn from that? What can you learn from that? So I would say that the most difficult thing was just that inner journey. Other than that, financial literacy was something that I wasn't necessarily like taught or get a lot of experience in. So that's been a huge journey for me, was just to like speak the same language as the outer world, outside of sports, outside of football. So yeah.
So obviously it's a difficult transition, and it's a period that everybody goes through, some longer than others. But there are a lot of strengths that being an athlete, you can carry that over to different fields. And I think that's something you're working with young athletes right now. But it's something that if you can tune into that, you can find real success wherever you go, whether it's the work ethic that you have instilled in you, if you can tailor that to what you're doing, right? If you can, the kind of dedication you can put towards something, even the book smarts, where a lot of people, there's stereotypes with athletes that maybe aren't as smart, but when you think about these players that are in the league and studying these dense playbooks, it's a lot of this is chess, it's not checkers, right? So it's tougher than that. So what'd you find were a lot of things that you were able to, as an athlete yourself, use and utilize a lot of these skills that you had growing up, just being an athlete, and use them somewhere else?
I would say the biggest thing is just that understanding of repetition and the cumulative effect of repetition, and how we're so, our whole career, we're lifting these weights and we're seeing like measurements actually grow over the years. And so I think for people who never experienced doing something consistently and seeing like real physical results, it's tough for them to conceptualize, how much work it takes to actually build in something. And I think that's one thing I noticed when I left the game, was that I was moving faster than other people in terms of, building on skills and using that skill to build on another skill and using that skill to build on another skill. And I think conceptually that comes down from, I mean, subconsciously that comes from all of those years as a linebacker, learning how to shoot your hands, shoot your hands, shoot your hands a million times. And then once you get good at that, you shoot your hands and throw them away. Once you get good
Right.
at that, you start blitzing. I mean, you build on each technique. And so I would say athletes have a very good understanding of like hard work, and this soreness is only going to be here these first couple of weeks, and then it's going to get better. They know how to push through that uncomfortable feeling that a lot of people don't push through.
Right. So Mind Body Sports. Now that's what you're doing now, and that's the name. You founded it and everything, and we talked about a little bit about your passion in that and the underlying desire you have with that. But talk a little bit more about that. What you want to accomplish with that, and what all you do with that.
Yeah. So one of the main things that I'm looking to bring into athletics in a much more real way is mindfulness. When people think of the athletic side of mindfulness, they think of yoga. They don't necessarily think of mindfulness in terms of high impact sports. But once I didn't really get into mindfulness until like my 4th and 5th year of the league. That's when I started doing yoga, but it absolutely like transformed everything for me.
Mm-hmm.
And once I started doing research and seeing other athletes, great athletes who practice mindfulness, like Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, Michael Jordan, the whole Seahawks team, when they won the Super Bowl that year, they was doing mindfulness, and Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Oprah,
The best athletes in the world.
Steve,
And
businessmen,
and everything.
I saw a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, that really also helped me with my transition, that mindfulness piece. And so I saw it was something that helped performance, helped people get into that flow state, athletes get into that flow state. And it also has so many other benefits for healing mental health. And that's what made me really dive into that world. And I know from being in that environment my whole career that there's so little representation in terms of training mindset. I mean, training mentality, training mindset, not training mindset, training mentality, training mental health.
Right.
There can be more of that. And so I think that's ultimately my biggest passion, is to just bring a whole new holistic approach to training athletes and training high performance individuals.
And are you working with mainly younger kids, or what's kind of the age group that you're working with?
So it's the full range. So I have a camp that I do every summer, and that's part of the live event section of it, and that's for younger athletes. That's for like 8 to 16, and there's also a mentorship program that I have that's helping out younger athletes. But for the older athletes, that's more of my one-on-one coaching and team coaching. So it's the full range.
Gotcha.
And then I also do one-on-one like performance and mindset coaching, not just for athletes, but when it comes to mind body sports, that's the group.
With athletes themselves, what do you find is the biggest challenge? Is there one particular thing they struggle with, or is it really unique to the individual athlete?
It's very unique to the individual athlete. I think there's a lot of athletes who need help as far as resilience, like bouncing back. Mm-hmm. I know especially that was a big one for me, was getting over a bad play because I was so hard on myself. So just the resilience is a big one. And then also just just lack of confidence and lack of vision. I think what most athletes get out of it is just the idea of visualizing and connecting with that amazing play that they want to have. instead of thinking of all of the worst things that can happen. You know what I mean? Just people getting a chance to see themselves make the play. I think a lot of that's very new for a lot of athletes is to really see themselves making the play and feeling it inside themselves and like actually going through it. And then younger athletes, it's the first time they're dealing with the nerves and the butterflies, and they don't know how to really deal with that sometimes. And so they treat it as like scary nerves. And I try to explain to them that the like nervousness and excitement are the same thing. It's just the story that you put on it. But it's the same feeling. And so when you're feeling that, if you have a positive expectancy, if you expect something positive to happen, that's just you being excited, and that's a good thing. And then just teaching them like deep breaths and learning how to be in the middle of that, chaotic environments, loud crowds, and learning how to take each moment you can to be present and not dwell on, the next game or dwell on the last play that didn't go right. It's just being in the moment. So yeah.
Yeah, no, mentioning on the visualization aspect of it, it's became pretty wide known. I think it was, I don't know if Phil Jackson had talked about it before, but in his book, 11 Rings, how the Lakers and even in the Bulls, when he was coaching both those teams, they would have practices where they would just sit down on the court or whatever and just visualize, right? They would just visualize the different plays. They obviously had the triangle offense, so everything that came along with that, different players really trusting each other and that, and how strong that really is, the visualization aspect, the mental aspect, and how that can lead to success on the court.
It's so powerful. And I think ultimately, scientists are just learning even more so how powerful it is. And I think there's more for us as a human race to dive even deeper in as we start to accept other thoughts and other practices that are more like Eastern practices. There's more knowledge to be had about that whole thing. But ultimately, visualization is it transformed my entire life, and I realized the benefits of it. And the Phil Jackson, he is, the coach who brought on George Mumford, who was their mindfulness coach. Mm-hmm. And George Mumford is the one who actually was that guy who brought in that mindfulness into Phil Jackson's teams. And I mean, it's just a testament of how powerful it is. So, yeah.
Now, as far as regarding meditation, that's something that you've talked about as well. Where does that fall within this, and what I think a lot of people don't understand what all meditation is really, and a lot of people have like a certain perspective or a certain thought of like this is meditation or that's meditation, but there's a lot of different things out there. Explain that.
Yeah, so meditation in its most basic sense, and how I use it for athletes and help them understand it in a more like performance-based way, is training your awareness. And so when you're meditating, one of the main things you're doing is paying attention to your breath. And I call it a focal point. There's always like a focal point that the instructor is telling you to pay attention to, and you're bringing your awareness to that focal point. And your mind is going to wander. And when it does, and when you notice it's wandered away, you bring your attention back to that focal point. That journey back to your focal point is the whole practice. Every time you notice that you've gone away from your breath, every time you notice it, that's a win. And that's what you're training yourself to do, is notice your thoughts and to be able to focus in the present moment. And so that's what meditation does, especially for athletes. It helps them to remain focused and not be distracted as easily. And that's just like the performance benefit of it. But there's so many other benefits that that meditation does for you in terms of like mental health and recovery. But in the basic sense, it helps you train your awareness.
So it goes right back to what you were saying a little bit earlier about focusing on the present, right? If let's say if you're a quarterback, you throw an interception the last play. If you're playing basketball and you miss a three-pointer, a wide-open three, or missed a dunk, something we see players get easily flustered. The practice of meditation is something that could easily be translated right there to where, all right, I noticed that I'm letting these thoughts get in my mind. Now let me focus on right now, right?
Yeah, what's important to know is that where we place our attention is where we place our energy. And so if our attention is still in the past and you're in the middle of the basketball game, if your attention is still on a play in the past, then you literally aren't there in the present. And if you have somebody coming directly at you, focused on you, you have no chance to win that battle. And I was one of those guys who would get beat on a long pass to a running back, and they get a touchdown on me. That may stick with me for another 10 minutes in the game. And I had to work myself out of that being so hard on yourself thing, because I literally would not be there.
Right.
The present. There'd be people I'm going against and people who were waiting for me to make a call. And I was still, some of my energy would still be in the past. And so that's the importance of it, is like when you're fully in the present moment, you are bringing your full self, your full power, your full attention to be able to perform at your very best.
And what about inspirations as far as meditation, mindfulness, everything that comes with that? We talked about Phil Jackson, different people like that. You talked about LeBron James, these great athletes, Lionel Messi, that utilize this skill and this practice. But is there anyone that really inspired you to really yourself take on this and take it on more than just something you're going to practice, but you're going to pass on and inspire other people with?
I don't know if there's one specific person who I look to model like meditation or like mindfulness from, but I know seeing those people, like I mentioned, that were successful do it, it made me start my own practice. But meditation, it's such a personal practice. It's just a journey to understand yourself and your inner workings, and how your mind works, how your thoughts work, and you start to ask questions to yourself of, why am I thinking like that? What is this feeling that's coming up? How long has that blockage been inside of me? You start to realize, oh, I remember in elementary school I had that argument and I never really recovered from it, like things like that. So it's such a personal journey that there was really no one to like look up to model after, because everyone has their own personal journey with it. So yeah, it's so personal.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody goes through their own journey. Now, what you're doing is absolutely amazing, and with these young kids and the influence and what you're putting inside of them. But at the same time, this is a business you're running, and the field you went into post playing career is in entrepreneurship, right? You're an entrepreneur, and there's its own struggles with that. How has that been different than, let's say, the traditional? You could go do anything. You go sell cars. You see a lot of big time players who have big names that go on to do TV, stuff like that. But entrepreneurship in particular is something that a lot of people strive for and have difficulties with. So how has that process been for you?
It's been a learning journey. It's been a lot of learning involved in it. The way I look at it is, when you're doing something that you're passionate about, it is really an extension of you. And, every single day that I look towards my goals, look towards my vision, and I know that my business is an avenue, is a vessel to get to my ultimate vision of where I see my family, where I see, in terms of how many people that I can touch and impact. So it's really about just continuing to take steps forward and falling down and getting back up and learning why you fell down, and then falling down again and getting back up and learning why you fell down. Back to that athlete mindset. I think that's what's helped me out the most, is not being afraid to fail and to move forward. So, that entrepreneurial life is is difficult. Thankfully, I had a career that gave me a bit of time and wiggle in this transition to be able to really figure out what it is that I love and want to do. Um, but ultimately, what I'm teaching and coaching is so entranced in my life and my upbringing that is really just me being me, and I really believe in, the energy we put out, we get back, whether that's through money, whether that's through, whatever we put out, we get back in some form or fashion, whether it's money or whatever. And so I just seek to put all I can into giving value and serving others, and whatever comes through that is a blessing. That's my take on entrepreneurship. Just serve.
Absolutely. And I was gonna ask your advice for former athletes and just people in general, but especially former athletes who would want to take that route. And I think you just pretty much answered that. Is that those are the pros? But is there anything in particular that you would say?
Yeah, I would just say, let's see. I think one of the things that I really attempt to do is find gratitude in every single moment. I think I would tell this to anybody. I would tell this to athletes, that there is always, in every single second, every single moment, something to be grateful for, and you'll find it if you look for it. You'll find something to complain about if you look for that too. So
Absolutely.
I think remaining grateful opens you up to receiving. That's what I would say.
That's a big key. Now, I with the news that's been kind of going on the past couple of days, Patrick Mahomes yesterday signed a 10-year contract. Yeah, 10 years, $503 million, the biggest in American sports history. So it's definitely something I had to bring up for you. The NFL is known for the acronym being, not for long. You don't last too long in there. And even quarterbacks who are the face of the franchise, who we see getting these 5-year contracts, and they're big contracts. But the previous highest contract was Matt Ryan with $150 million in total money. He just got $503 million. I just kind of want to hear your input on that.
Yeah, that's I'm really happy for him, man. That's fantastic. I don't know Patrick personally, never played against him, but I'm really happy for him. That is completely out of the blue, like you said, for NFL standards. I'm interested to see how the rest of the team's money is going to get spread out. I don't even know how that looks, but I'm really happy for him. And sure, that's the value that he put out, and that's what people feel about him, and he deserves that for sure. I'm happy that those MLB type contracts are starting to creep up in the NFL, though. That's very exciting.
Yeah, it wasn't really expected. They did say it was going to break precedents and everything like that, but that did remind me of I remember when I was in high school and Ndamukong Suh signed a big contract with the Dolphins, and you were there with the Dolphins when he signed that contract. And I just remember seeing a $60 million guaranteed, and I was talking to my friends like, "Yo, that's unreal. That's unreal." And then since you were there with them, and that just shows you how things progress very fast. I mean, that was maybe 6 years ago or something like that. But so you played with Ndamukong Suh. I would say he was probably the Aaron Donald of that time as far as with the dominance we see. I wanted to ask you.
That he somehow was on the same team as Aaron Donald. I couldn't even believe that happened.
Yeah. So very dominant player. I wanted to ask you, who's the best player that you played with in your career?
Best player that I played with.
I'll have about 4 different little string of questions right here, but this is the first one.
This is college and NFL?
Yeah, sure.
College and NFL? Okay. Man, the best player I ever played against. I want to give you a good
or with.
or with or with.
Yeah, or with.
I want to give you a good answer for that. Why don't we come back to that question?
All right. Well, okay. So I'm gonna go to the next one real quick. Position wise though, talk quarterback. So you played against a lot of quarterbacks. You were a linebacker, so you definitely had some quarterbacks constantly in your mind. All right, I'm gonna face this guy. And you played in a time when this arguably was the best collection of quarterbacks, right? Who was the best? Who was the best quarterback you faced?
Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers had the whole thing.
And
speed.
Yeah. Right.
Intellect. He was. I mean, he called the whole offense. He ran no huddle. Just came up. I've never seen a quarterback like. He's out there playing Madden for real. Like he comes up to the line and looks at us, and then looks at these two receivers. Does something here. Does something here. Look at us. Check that. Do something here. Do something here. And then bam. And then he just moved down the field. He got so much swag with him too. And then he can run.
Right.
How do you on an audible
right
fake spike in the last play of the game to beat us in Miami.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember watching that.
Yeah, so he got
and I think Miami's own Dan Marino was the last one to do that before Aaron Rodgers, right?
It was wild.
So obviously, just you don't know Patrick Mahomes, but I think a comparison a lot of people have is because you talk about Aaron Rodgers, arguably the most talented quarterback as far as just all the talents and intangibles that you mentioned. Do you see Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, I definitely see that in terms of just someone who can make a play out of anything. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so as a linebacker, you grow up, you play running back as well most of the time, and you face a lot of running backs. You're getting around linemen, and that's your guy you make a lot of contact with. Who was the best running back you faced?
Man, you know who gave us the most havoc was Sean McCoy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a Cowboy fan, so he gave us some havoc too.
Yeah. He gave us a lot of mess. Yeah, I mean, there's so many good players. It's hard for me to pick one of any of them.
There was some good running backs at that time. Arian Foster was real good, right?
Yeah.
Matt Forte was doing his thing at that time.
Yeah. LaShawn McCoy, he was, because we played him twice a year, that's who I just know more than anything. I know we're going to have to. And then they run the ball so many times, the Bills. So, they had Tyrod Taylor. Yeah. I'm going to go with LaShawn.
Okay, cool. And a position you have less familiarity with as far as, I mean, you got familiarity with all these players, but less, let's say, intimate as far as your position goes. But a receiver, you are out there covering receivers sometimes. Yeah. Who was the best receiver you faced?
Maybe DeAndre Hopkins.
Already at that time?
Yeah. Yeah. That or Megatron.
Yeah. You were playing at the time that Calvin was out there.
Yeah,
he was a freak.
Yeah. D Hop. I mean, I ended up playing with him in Houston too, but I remember against him. He just caught everything. I've rarely ever seen him drop the ball.
Right. Were you that time you were in Houston? Was that the Hard Knocks year or no?
No.
Because you probably seen the D'Angelo Hall, DeAndre Hopkins a little thing.
Fight?
Well, yeah, but DeAndre Hopkins was talking a lot of mess, and then or D'Angelo Hall was talking a lot of mess, and then DeAndre Hopkins broke his ankles on a hitch route.
Yeah.
It's it went kind of viral, but
I was there the year where everyone got hurt. Deshaun Watson got hurt as well.
Right.
But no, yeah, that was a good time. DeAndre Hopkins is the one.
And in your division too, that you spent quite a bit of time in, since you're talking about playing LaShawn McCoy a lot, a player in a position you do come in contact a lot with as a linebacker is tight end, and you faced a pretty dominant force in New England too.
Yeah. Who's my favorite tight end? Who the best tight end I played against?
Probably Rob Gronkowski, right?
Yeah, it would have to be Gronk. There were a lot of good ones.
Right.
A lot of savvy tight ends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard. There's so many great players in the league for their own specific reason, their own specific niche. There are a lot of tight ends that know how to use their body really well, and they're very effective. The Antonio Gates of the world.
Yeah.
Who's on man from the Cowboys?
Jason Witten.
Yeah, he was aggravating to play against. So yeah.
All right, so let's go back. You had some time to think, possibly. Best player to play with or against. That could be a defender as well. It had me thinking because, like I said, the Patrick Mahomes deal reminded me of the Ndamukong Suh back at that time, and you were playing with Suh at that time. So that's someone that I wouldn't be surprised to hear, but I just wanted your perspective on that.
I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. I don't know why. I'm trying to think of somebody who I was just on the field with and was just looking at them like, oh my God.
Because there has to be somebody, like, is there, right? There is that, right? I mean, we watched The Last Dance, and it's kind of the way people looked at Michael Jordan. Like you hear like guys like Shaq come out and like, yeah, I looked at him, it was like Jesus. Like, I don't know if there was somebody on that level, obviously, the Michael Jordan level, but was there just that guy, the best player maybe that you played with or played against that either caused fear on opponents or just a crazy amount of respect? Aaron Rodgers, I think you talked about how great he was, but
yeah, I would. I want to give a shout out to a guy, and I'm not gonna say it's like the best I've ever played with, but okay. Brent Grimes.
Oh yeah,
Brent Grimes, for his size and his age, he was one player where I would say wow a lot of times with him. Being on his team, practicing with him, seeing how high he jumps up in the air and be doing flips and catching the ball with one hand as like a relatively small guy, he would have me saying wow a lot. That I was looking for that wow factor of somebody I've been with.
Yeah.
And there's players like that, but Brent Grimes, I want to give him a shout out.
He was known for talking a little bit too.
Yeah. Man, I don't know, man. Rashad Jones. I'm a big fan of Rashad Jones too at safety. He was somebody who, man, he made so many plays when we needed it. So many plays. I got so many guys who I think are like my favorite. Matt Elam.
Okay, yeah, another safety.
Yeah, at the University of Florida, man. Matt was one of those guys. I always told Matt he was my favorite player. Like, he was one of those dudes who was larger than life. He had that Sean Taylor energy. Gotcha, I love safety.
Well, look, man, Jelani, I really appreciate you coming through. It was very insightful, everything you did, everything you're doing. And I think a lot of people can take a lot from that, learning what mindfulness is, meditation. Not only that, what you're doing right now, but the transition and how you were able to go from being an athlete and overcome different adversity in general to be able to get to where you are. Very good stuff, man. And then I just had to ask you some of the NFL stuff. But before we go, I know you got social media and your own YouTube channel and everything like that. If you want to kind of plug that right now.
Yeah, you can check me out on YouTube. The name of my channel is Mighty's Touch, MIGHTYS space Touch, TOUCH. So check that out. Subscribe to that. That's cool. And my Instagram is at Mighty King Jenkins, MIGHTYKINGJENKINS, and that's where I live for the most part.
Awesome, man. I thank you for coming through again, man. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the conversation.
This is cool, man. I appreciate you. Beyond the lines, right?
That's it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Keep up the good work, man. Proud of you. Happy for you. Keep doing the good work.
Appreciate you. If you enjoyed this interview with Jelani, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment what you liked about the video, about the interview, something he said that might have interested you, or any questions you have. And make sure to go do what he said. Go follow his YouTube and go check him out on Instagram. He has a lot of insightful stuff to say. So we'll be bringing this next episode next Friday at 1 p.m. And the guest is to be determined. So make sure you stay updated on our social media. But thank y'all. Yeah, leave a comment, subscribe, and a like.